Hi everyone and welcome to today's webinar. We're going to get going. So before we start, just a few ground rules. There is a Q&A chat bot function here. So if you want to ask any questions throughout the session, please put your questions in there. And that is the only rule. So let's get going. Today we are going to talk about the topic of Google and LLMs, the difference between them in search from behavior through to output. We're going to share some really interesting data, and I've got some amazing panelists here who are going to decode that data and tell you what it means and what you can do about it. So I am Adele. I am Product Marketing Director here at Similarweb. I am going to be your moderator here today. So I'm going to be putting the questions to Baruch and Kevin. And if you guys have any questions, please do put them in the chat and I will try and get to them at the end. We're likely going to go on for about 45 minutes. The invitation is for an hour, but we'll try and end it at the 45-minute mark. But if we've got too many questions, we can go over. And speaking of the people who will be answering those questions, I'm sure you saw this on the invite, so you know who's here. It's not going to be a big surprise, but two incredible speakers. Firstly, Kevin Indig, a good friend of Similarweb's. Kevin has worked doing SEO for some of the really top companies in the world, and he is a consultant that goes beyond SEO as well. He is an incredible contributor to the SEO community, to the marketing community, business community as well. So if you don't follow him on LinkedIn, you must do. He shares data, stories, studies, and some amazing opinions as well, if you don't mind me saying, Kevin. And if you're not subscribed to his Substack growth memo, also please Google that or look it up in ChatGPT, whichever search engine of choice, and make sure you subscribe because you share some fascinating stuff on there. Kevin, would you like to say hi to everyone?
Hi, yeah, and by the way, a good friend feels absolutely right. So it's great to be with you. Thank you.
Thanks, Kevin. And another great friend of mine, because we don't have a choice, we work together, but is Baruch Toledano. He is the GM of our web intelligence product at Similarweb. So he is the brains behind market research, marketing, SEO, and all of the Gen AI functions that we're putting out. If there's a time at the end, we do have a sneak peek of our most recent Gen AI tool that is launching. But Baruch has spoken at Brighton SEO, many other conferences, and is a real master in the search world, having come from CPO at Conductor here to Similarweb and really driving product innovation. Baruch, would you like to say hi to everyone as well?
Hi, everyone. Definitely feel honored to be here with Kevin and with Adele. We've got some interesting data to share and definitely some early learnings from these two worlds we're all navigating through all the changes. So excited to be here.
Thanks both. Okay, we're going to get into it. So we're going to cover three main topics today when we're thinking about Google and LLMs and the differences between the two. So we're going to start at the beginning with searches. So where are people searching? How are they searching? And how is user behavior adopting? Basically, what's happening. Secondly, we are going to look at the thorny topic of clicks. Are we saying goodbye to clicks? What have we got to do to get our paws on those last clicks that are available? And thirdly, there are still some clicks, and let's have a look at which clicks you'd prefer. Should they be coming from LLMs, Google, or mix? Which one is going to help you convert more? So we're going to start off with topic one, the searches. We're hearing lots of different things. We are hearing Google telling us that people are searching on Google more than ever before. At the same time, people are saying SEO is dead. Everyone's using chatbots, and that's not SEO, that's GEO. I have heard that if you mention GEO too many times in a webinar, people switch off. So I'm going to try and not mention that again. But instead of covering this whole topic here, I'd like to start with going to one of the chatbots, to one of the most popular LLM. Now, Kevin, you shared this a while ago, actually, now, but when the adoption for ChatGPT was really taking off, it was taking off very, very quickly. And you predicted this kind of timeline of if the trend continues as it was, maybe it can catch up to Google. What are your thoughts on that now?
It's such a great point, or such a great time to ask about this. I just had a chance to update the data. I haven't shared them with anyone, but I'll share them with you, of course. And so, what I'm seeing is that the traffic to ChatGPT is not growing as quickly as I predicted, but traffic to Google is dropping faster than I predicted. And so, I think it's a very exciting time. There obviously is a lot of nuance here, right? I created this chart to provoke us to consider that there might be a future in which Google is not the dominant search engine, as there was a past where that was the case, right? And I just wanted to kind of open people's synapses a little bit to kind of consider what that could look like and what to do there. But what we have seen is that obviously ChatGPT usage has grown significantly. Models have become a lot better. Google has leveled the playing field in a sense by not just rolling out AI overviews, but also AI mode, which is an interface that basically looks like ChatGPT, right? And so the conflict and battle between ChatGPT and Google and all the other surrounding players, it couldn't be hotter, right? It's a super hot time. It's very exciting. There's a lot of change and shift. And of course, I think SEO is kind of the absolute frontier of that kind of battle, right? It's the first row of the audience in the boxing ring, and that's why it's so exciting to be in SEO right now, because that's where AI kind of opens the gate, if you will, right? And from there disrupts everything else.
I love looking that as because the boxing analogy could mean a good or a bad thing. So some people feel like they're being a bit beaten up, whereas actually maybe you have it the front row seat, like you say, and you can actually catch things as they're happening and also take control of that in your business. Kevin, I've seen you speak at lots of conferences talking about how SEOs can be more strategic and the business leaders, and I think that that encapsulates that perfectly.
Thank you.
So you mentioned AI mode, and actually here at Similarweb, we did a bit of a study on this last week. So AI mode went live in the US on the 20th of May. It was in beta previously. So we've looked at some preliminary Clickstream data, real user data on adoption mode. So we looked at how many people using Google within a day clicked on AI mode. Now, they may have clicked via the tab, they may have clicked through an AI overview. Our data encapsulates all of that, but what we see is there was a steady growth, and the last few days it's kind of plateaued around 1%. Baruch, I'm presuming that Google are not going to be satisfied with leaving people in AI mode at just 1%. I presume that this is going to be a trend that they're going to push across more countries, more prominently in the SERPs. What do you see here?
So I actually think what we see is Google is standing behind their promise, and early user adopting things is definitely in this chart. So early adopter, like all of us SEO, probably sign up on the beta and want to make sure we get our hands into AI mode. So definitely, they've been giving us all the information that this is coming, and they are been doing it through the AI overview for sure for quite some time. And we see user interested in the AI mode as another mechanism that is our new reality in many ways of how people want to seek information. So I actually think that we will see a gradual adoption into this, whether it is Google putting it as the default landing page that we're coming into, or whether it is we're still at the all, this is still the default. I think a big part of this, of course, is how Google will monetize. So Google, at the end of the day, want to monetize, of course, our sessions and our visits and how we seek information, rightfully so. And I think the moment that they will feel confident, rest assured, I think we are here to see the new future in more hands of users. So absolutely, I think it's exciting, as Kevin said, like this is a new place. And with changes, we all are a bit afraid, but I think this is a good sign. We will be watching it carefully and closely how it's being adopted. What do you think, Kevin?
It's interesting because I've been talking to a couple of business leaders, agency leaders, and they're all saying the same thing, right? And I would agree with that. The writing is on the wall. AI mode could really be kind of the future interface. Sundar Pichai has already on the Lex Friedman podcast admitted that they will bring more AI mode parts into AI overviews. I'm not sure what that means, but yeah, I think the writing is on the wall. And what surprises me the most is that Google kind of gets on the same level as ChatGPT, right? The interface looks almost exactly the same. And so the incumbent is kind of, stepping off the throne to fight the battle on the same level as a challenger. It's very surprising to me.
Yes, yes. Actually, it's interesting to see how we all get a different SERP results on these
Yeah.
AI modes. So definitely lots of clues over there, also taking from AI overview, from the SERP, but also how we see them showing up on the AI mode. So yes, exciting.
Absolutely. And speaking of Google, yes, Google. Kevin, it was interesting you saying before that numbers are actually going down in Google a little bit more than we thought that they would. I'm guessing with AI overview, their retention stats may increase and they may start succeeding in that area. But based on some of the claims that they've come out with, you worked with some quite big data sets. I think we gave you quite a bit of data that you mined through. I would love you to be able to talk to the audience about what the hypothesis were and how you challenged that and what the actual data showed you about user behavior on Google.
Absolutely. Thanks again for that data, by the way. I think it was incredibly
No worries.
insightful. And where it came from is essentially that it essentially comes from a frustration of Google not sharing more data, right? This is obviously a massive disruption and change to the ecosystem. There's certain business models that are collapsing under this. And so, obviously there are claims of like, hey, we're sending more traffic to the web or to a broader number of web players and people love it, blah, blah, blah. But there's no numbers, right? Now at Google I/O, Sundar Pichai shared or showed a chart for the first time, but it leaves a lot to be desired. And so you helped me fill those gaps in. And so I took apart some of the claims that Sundar Pichai and Liz Reed, the head of search, made in the past about AI overviews, and kind of stress tested them with data. And like, look, data is always a bit complex, right? So I don't want to say they lie or they intentionally withhold the truth. And I also think that we'll probably come back to this in the webinar later. I don't want to jump ahead too much, but I think that kind of traffic is going down. I think Google and everyone there knows that, or most people know that. And at the same time, I don't think it kind of it has the consequences that we all fear it has, at least not for everyone. So anyway, I looked at the claims. I saw that, as you can see in the chart here, some of them are true, some of them are probably less so true. For example, more complex queries or longer queries. We looked at the query growth over time with Similarweb data. We found that that's not necessarily the case. And look, like it could absolutely be that the reason is that there is a small early adopter audience that does search more and longer, and that's kind of what Google is highlighting. So that I want to absolutely say that this is possible. AI overviews growing faster than search, absolutely true. Usage growing, kind of usage is a very broad word. It could mean people come back to Google more often. That's true. But if you were to define usage as people clicking on web results, that is less so true. And that is actually, I think, the crux of the whole data here. People are clicking less. Zero-click searches are increasing clearly because of AI overviews, and it makes sense. People are clicking out way, way less. And when they click through, we do see better engagement also with Similarweb data. So that part is true again. I think Sundar Pichai needs to be very careful of saying this is basically killing clicks, because many industries would be up in arms. Most importantly, the publisher industry, which is also most affected by all of these trends. So I'm going to leave it at that. But it was very interesting to be able to finally stress test some of these claims.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's always like causation and correlation in the data as well. But I think anecdotally, we all see a lot of the same things in Google as well. And actually, the data that you analysed and showed supports a lot of that anecdotal evidence. So yeah, it's really interesting to see. And finally, in this section, again, kind of comparing the search behavior and maybe how people are using Google. Maybe they're still using it, but they're using it in a different way. We see data here about keywords, how many people use them in Google versus prompt length in ChatGPT. It's just wildly different, 10 times as much. And if we look at Google, we're seeing that navigational queries in Google are increasing year on year. Is that a fair representation of what you think is happening overall, Baruch, that this data is showing?
I think these charts unpack so many interesting sort of point of view that are going on. On the one hand, definitely we all are seeing the prompts and the queries are growing on ChatGPT, and it's definitely taking a big part of how users are adopting and providing a lot more context to do part of their work. And along the way, informational queries are also very long. Again, with the full context, people are becoming more familiar of using that interface to get more precise answers to the question. Just from our data set, this is about 9 to 10% of our overall our prompts that we have seen are all informational in their nature. So like the what, the where, the why, like that we're familiar from Google. So a representation of these types of informational seeking type of activities on these prompts. So that's on its own an interesting part, and I think can give us a hint maybe into the future where people may carry that behavior into maybe AI mode in the future. But in the meantime, what we see right now actually is we see an interesting change in behavior in the relationship to Google. And what we see is a lot more navigational. This is a big percentage of growth, as we can see here in terms of navigation query. And when we say navigation, we mostly mean, of course, those branded terms. So brands do resonate with folks. They do come back to Google to get there. And so I think to me, that points out something that we maybe as SEO didn't kind of like, well, show me all the non-branded. Like we look at like when people interface with the product that we have is like immediately they filter on the non-branded. Show me the non-branded. This is the one I want to compete on. And I say to you guys, like, pay attention to your brand, pay attention to brand modifiers, pay real attention and grow them around the topics because they are super important. I will even say that potentially in this new world that we are walking into, that brands are rewarded. It's no secret, right? Really good brands are rewarded, and they are disproportionately sometimes rewarded. The question is, can we create a lot more association for new brands and for more topics against brand? And I think that is the one thing we could absolutely do by understanding the sort of like the topics and the entities that surround these topics and its entirety, and how can we participate. I actually anticipate more and more stealing of brand in the time being. And so start protecting your brand also on paid search, because if brand is becoming such an important cachet, we always know about this, but that becomes like even more important. So I would definitely say pay attention to your branded terms, pay attention to modifiers of branded. Users are just getting used to it, and this is what they put. As a result, a lot of interfacing with places like ChatGPT and getting a lot of information and forming their opinion. And I know Kevin has a lot of information probably about how they form their opinion when they are actually spending their time.
It's
So,
true.
yeah.
And you're also very right, Baruch, about the importance of looking at branded search. I agree. Like as an SEO, sure, you kind of focus on non-branded, but the trap here is that we know that Google will rank our brand no matter what, as soon as our brand appears in the search query, right? However, it does not mean that we have the best page on our site for that branded query. It could absolutely be that people ask questions like, like an important question about the product, and then Google shows your homepage instead of a page where you can maybe give a better answer. So I just wanted to throw that in because I see that mistake and thinking over and over again. I think it actually hurts companies as LLMs are getting so much better at answering these questions.
Absolutely.
And we've also had quite a few questions in the chat while this has been going on. So I just want to clarify what we see on ChatGPT in terms of input. So we see on average prompts are around 90 words. So prompts include like work type prompts where you ask it to do something for you, where you ask it to do a task-based prompts. Whereas the informational length of the prompt, that's what we are seeing as comparable to Google. So in Google, you may search for best flights, Croatia. In ChatGPT, you may say, I am going on holiday to Croatia. I'm looking for flights. And so your search is longer, and that's what we see. So the length in ChatGPT tends to be about 10 times longer than what people input into Google. And Kevin, I remember something that you wrote a while ago, actually, around the death of the keyword and the importance of topics. And actually, we see this in terms of how people are searching in these generative AI ways now.
Yeah, totally. And it's it's also interesting because it doesn't just reflect in long prompts, as you correctly say. It also reflects in AI mode. So AI mode uses this technique called query fan out, where essentially, Gemini behind the scenes takes your prompt, turns it into many synthetic queries or just kind of queries that it thinks best match your prompt, and then gives you an answer back based on a summary of all of these different queries. That is essentially, user intent. That is essentially kind of optimizing for a topic holistically. And so I think the kind of near future that we're moving towards, and maybe should already have been, is to kind of systematically map out a topic like flights or destinations, or I don't know, flights to Croatia or Croatia holidays, right? And then systematically map out all the different jobs that people are trying to do within that topic or within that intent. So I want to evaluate Croatia travel, right? The jobs I need to do is find flights, find hotels, find activities, make sure they match to me, right? And so the better we are able as companies who want to be visible for that topic to create content that solves all of these jobs to be done, the more likely we'll be visible than in LLMs, but also in these kind of newer search modalities like AI mode.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. Do more of the Googling behind the topic for you, because that's what they're doing. So
Yes.
Guy, thank you so much in the chat for all your questions so far. We'll be getting to them at the end. Before we move on to the next section about clicks, there's actually been a lot of questions about clicks. In terms of understanding your audience and what to prioritize at the moment, do you guys have any one sentence advice for people of what they should be doing, what they should be looking out for, where their audience are, what they're interested in, and how to cater for it?
Okay, so I think first understand, as Kevin said, the entire topic holistically, and look at that. This is super important when we're thinking about where the audience are. Second, start measuring the presence also on these LLMs. I think on these ChatGPTs, they are super important because they give you a lot of clues about which are the brands that are actually showing up. And it's very important. We also get those clues on the AI overview around it. And so it gives us a complete sense of like, oh, well, these are all the elements and the questions that people have around it. Second, don't ignore the old things. Google is an evolution. Even AI overview, if we think about it, yes, we feel it's a revolution, but it's an evolution to a lot of things we had in the past. People also ask additional questions, they automatically completed these queries. So it gives us a sense of like what is of the interest. Actually, Google is trying to do a good job of giving us enough hints inside the SERPs to better understand what is interesting to people. And I think we should actually absolutely watch them on both places and really understand this topic more broadly and more nuanced, that it has many facets to it. So I think we should definitely watch them, and we should definitely look at how much are they growing in the change in their behavior, in what they're interested what they're interested and what they're seeking to find from both information, as well as actually taking action.
Yeah, everything Baruch you say, I very much agree with. There's so much information, even in AI mode. When it fans out, it will tell you the queries that it looks at, right? So there's so much that we can learn from how Google works. If I would add one thing on top of that, it would be, I'm getting a lot of mad clients right now. And it's because I'm really pushing them to talk to their audiences, to their customers. And it's this kind of like, weird thing that everybody says they do, but nobody really does. And so it is incredibly, as somebody who has, researched in this space firsthand and observed users using Google, it is incredibly insightful and rewarding to even just talk to the people you're trying to sell to and deeply understand what information actually matters to them and what they're actually trying to accomplish. So I think everybody gets the point, but like, take this as another strong push to reach out to your customers, just talk to them and not like listen to or look at another conversation that sales had or that product UX had, but from the marketing department to the customers, a direct conversation. It's incredibly insightful.
I love that. Well, I work in product marketing, so I have to talk to people all the time. So I actually think there's now I saw a great post on LinkedIn about it the other day that actually SEO needs to take a lot from product marketing into it now, because that's where you get the wins now, by really deeply understanding your audience and how to talk to them and all of those aspects. So yeah, full circle moments sometimes. Okay, segueing into this one, we've had a lot of questions in the chat about this, around clicks and mentions and the difference between them and what does this mean. Kevin, I stole this quote from you. So 2024 will be remembered as the year of traffic. So that means in 2025, we're already past it. Kevin, do you stand by that?
Yeah, 100%. 2024 is peak traffic year. And, a lot of people say or ask me, Kim, do you mean SEO traffic? And I'm saying, no, I mean traffic. Because most of the time, SEO makes up the biggest traffic bucket for the majority of companies. There are exceptions, but SEO and Google has been one of the biggest traffic, or maybe the last big traffic referral source so far. That is going away, and that's okay, right? The goal here is not to say that 25 and 26 and all the years after are going to be miserable. The goal is just here to say that the times of high traffic volumes are over, because people, and I mean consumers or people in the broadest sense, are and will use LLMs in every corner of technology to get answers to the questions, right? We're not just talking about Google, we're not just talking about ChatGPT, all the other LLMs. We're also talking about, WhatsApp has an AI feature now. Excel has an AI feature now, right? Like, you probably don't want to do this, but you could ask for cookie baking recipes in Microsoft Excel. And so, people search in many different places now, more than ever before. That might increase, and they get answers without clicking through to sites in a lot of cases. And so, traffic, clicks, etc. Those are just not the metrics anymore to really gauge success. And of course, you should have always looked at the bottom line, no doubt. But traffic and clicks always were this leading indicator, right? This middle or kind of bridge number or bridge metric that hints at maybe whether you're getting more clients or whether you sell more in the future. And that's going away.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we had a question from Kathy around LLMs and how they give traffic out. So she's saying that it seems 50% of LLM responses don't bother to include a link source. So it moves us to a world of visibility and brand and different metrics to look at, which is new. Although the PR industry has faced that issue for a long time of how do you prove value from visibility? And again, that's more other marketing disciplines that become relevant to SEO, which is very interesting. But we do see that LLMs are giving out traffic. Now, obviously, this is coming from a lower place, so the growth numbers are huge. But Baruch, you looked at this data recently for Brighton. So we've got this in UK. Someone asked about whether we've got US data as well. We do, and we've got some US data in the second end of the presentation. But Baruch, you see for some particular industries, the growth of clicks coming from LLMs is quite high at the moment.
Yeah, so we definitely see in our data a lot more folks coming from ChatGPT, Perplexity, and they're sending them to websites. And this has been an interesting throughout the different industries. Travel probably one of the highest one that here in the UK have seen quite a bit of this referral traffic. And this traffic is actually fantastic. So I don't think we as an SEO should actually shy away from it. We should actually pay attention to it. We should pay attention to where are they are being sent to, because that's give us a lot of insights about what also their journey was before actually they came to us. Now, granted, they're still sending a lot of traffic to homepages of these particular websites. And not always just to the most to the second or third level, but they're also growing their share of sending traffic into the deeper pages, which tells you quite a bit of information about the importance of the pages, maybe that you didn't give enough attention to, that actually the LLM believed that they were relevant for you. So I think this growth in traffic, we should harness it. We should look at it and analyze the reasons why are the potential prompts that came from this space. But I think it's good news, but it's not necessarily a replacement. It's the entire point of view about how sources of traffic are still coming to my website. I do still believe that people seek connection, validation with the brands themselves in many cases. But it is a valid traffic to watch and monitor, because it gives us a lot of clue also to what happened earlier in the funnel.
Absolutely. And actually, Kevin did some analysis on where LLMs send users, and they really do over-index on home pages and then pages with URL structures that are really deep in a website. So it's almost the exact opposite pattern of Google, where they're very precise, sending users to where you tell them where they want to go. We actually had a question from Julia from Linga Travel about how do Google and LLMs differ in how they decide their results. I'm just going to quickly show this, which is the travel industry. On the left-hand side, we see traffic from Google, organic traffic from Google going to either Skyscanner, which is in purple, or Rome to Rio website, which is in white. And then on the other side, we see for the same time period, traffic coming from ChatGPT. Now you can see that in ChatGPT, Rome to Rio, a smaller brand, gets a lot more traffic. So Baruch, I wonder if this is a pattern that we see, that it's not quite what works on Google works on LLMs.
100%. So I think a couple of things. First, Google seems fairly stable on the left-hand side of how they are routing traffic to the key website within the travel industry. But LLMs are still always in a training mode. But I think also the other piece to look into it on the right-hand side, which is in the end, the LLM is trying to give you answers to very, very specific questions. Actually, it will attempt to give you the best answer, even if it doesn't. It will make up an answer sometimes for you. And it will pick the right website in these scenarios sometimes to answer. So, for example, Rome to Rio in many ways is a site about moving from traveling from destination A to destination B, and where to stop and what's the best route and things like that. In many cases, this is a lot of like questions and queries in travel of how do you get from one place to another, of how you actually want to plan your trip, and not always necessarily booking something or doing an evaluation of a particular flight option or accommodation and such. The thing about this traffic is it's still very volatile. And so what you see here is a lot of volatility depending on the interest of people, but it also provides an opportunity for more niche brand actually to take part of that pattern. So I wouldn't say these are the same. Clearly, they are trained differently, and they may have a corpus of data and information that it was trained differently between, of course, Google and LLM, and each LLM is a bit different in its corpus of what it wants to feed. With that being said, it's just showing you that even the patterns of the traffic may point to different places that are of interest for people when they come to answer some specific question. So expect this still to be fluctuating quite a bit in terms of the places it sends the traffic, but it's also good news for many organizations to pay attention to these patterns.
Great. And Kevin, we've had loads of questions about this in the chat of, okay, how do I appear there then? How am I going to get myself in the LLMs? I know how to do it for Google. How do I do it for them?
Yeah, there's obviously a lot to it, right? You need to be part of the training data. There's a difference in kind of where you appear, how often you appear, how you present yourself, et cetera, et cetera. But what I did here in this exercise is I took some classic SEO metrics like domain rating or word count or backlinks or even just like total traffic, not even organic traffic, but total traffic. And I looked at the relationship between these metrics and content that shows up a lot in different LLMs. So specifically ChatGPT, AI overviews, and Perplexity. And what I wanted to understand is, which of these metrics have an outsized impact and which ones of these don't really matter. And what surprised me the most is that all the volume metrics have no saying in this game. So total backlinks, total keywords, total traffic mean basically nothing for your visibility in the LLMs. And what does really have an outsized voice here in this choir are things like content comprehensiveness in the form of word count, sentence count, and domain rate, or sentence count and flash score. So flash score, just for quick explainer, is basically a way to quantify how complex your style of writing is. Are you using a lot of jargon? Are you using long sentences that are hard to follow, etc.? And so what this clearly says is longer content that is easier to understand wins in LLMs. And it's not because it's long or LLMs count the number of words or sentences actually, but because generally the longer content is, the more insights it has, the more comprehensive it is, the deeper it is, right? And so that should be the takeaway for marketers here. You want to include detail, you want to include context, you want to make it very easy to understand, not just from a structural perspective and kind of the technical side of things, but the way that you structure sentences, right? My last sentence, for example, was really long, so that would not perform well in LLMs. But if I say, use short sentences and use active voice, those would perform a lot better. And then the other thing that is worth calling out here is also that brand popularity. So essentially, how many people search for your brand is one of the strongest predictors of how visible that brand is, right? So it goes back to what we said earlier, which is that people need to know you, have heard of you, and they need to have a good opinion of you. And the more that is true, the higher your chances also in succeeding on LLMs.
Amazing answer, and incredible to hear SEOs talking about the flesh score, because coming from a content background, that's how I was trained in all of my life, to either Hemingway flesh, whichever school of thought you looked at, it was to make things accessible for people, and ultimately it's always the audience first at the end of the day. So fascinating stuff. In terms of AI overviews, we see that that's a huge contributor to the growth in zero clicks. Actually, we're running quite a bit. We've kind of spent all of our time, but Baruch, give us a quick overview of what we see in terms of how many AI overviews are appearing and what that means for click.
Yeah, I'll just give a click into this. So this is the data that we looked in our entire keyword databases in the United States. And this is 27% of them carry AI overview, which represents 18.2% of the overall search volume. And this was 12% in January. So we're talking about Google is like massively putting it out there. And funny enough, I like to find always the interesting citations that these guys are using. And so I got the Rizzlers from X.com and EDR, something in Palo Alto network. Most impression, as probably expected, are in AIO are for these big players, which point out to you that your brand, again, is playing in many places, but these are sources of trust and truth to the AIO. And we have even further breakdown per industry, which are the domains that sort of like are gaining most citation, I would say, within most impression within AIO, as we see it. So,
And it's not a webinar if we don't mention Reddit appearing. So there we go.
yeah, well, it is there.
And then Kevin, you did an amazing usability study. I believe someone who you did that with is on the call today, Eric, in terms of looking at how real users are reacting to these. Could you briefly explain how you did the study and the core learnings for the people on the call?
Absolutely. Big shout out to Eric, the conductor behind the study. Eric and I together, we designed the study. Eric ran it, including like recruiting participants, hiring statisticians and UX consultants, and then together we evaluated the thing. So it's been such a fun project to work on, and I'll truly say it kind of changed the way that I look at SEO. So what we did here really quickly is we recruited 70 people out of the US across different age ranges in solving 8 tasks for us on Google and allowing us to record their actions, but also their thoughts and maybe also emotions. So the way that it looked is we tracked their screens, we recorded every dwell, hover, every time they would click on something, and they would comment out loud about their experience and impression of the search results. We designed those 8 tasks specifically so that in some cases they would encounter AI overviews so that we could understand how they engage with them. And in other cases, so that there is a variety of different user intents, like a local intent, a shopping intent, informational intent, et cetera, et cetera. And so what we got from that was, over 13,000 annotations, 30 hour of video material. It was a fantastic, insightful study. And some of the key takeaways here that you need to know is that, first of all, when people see an AI overview, they truly click less often. And this is not a before and after comparison. We weren't able to time it that well. But when we compare search results where there is an AI overview compared to one where there is not, there is a massive difference in clicks. At the same time, though, what we found out, and I think this is, in this whole conversation, right? If you want to take one thing away, it should be that clicks have always kind of been empty calories anyway. They've never been that insightful. I mentioned earlier that they are this leading indicator that helps us kind of predict and understand where things are going, but they were never the end all be all. And so what we saw in this study is that people click a lot less when AI overviews show up. But that does not mean that they get their final answer from AI overviews. That actually only happened 20% of the time. 80%, they went to classic organic search results or SERP features to like really get a final answer for what they're looking for. And this is the key, right? Clicks are down, but does not mean that your presence in classic search or in AI overviews means anything less. It just is a different way to look at search and the metrics that we're getting. We're also seeing interesting trends like people validating AI answers with platforms like Reddit and YouTube. And there is a big age difference. So if you're addressing older people, classic search results matter a lot more. If you're addressing really young people, then they're already, connected with their brains to AI. They're very receptive for AI search results and very receptive to platforms like Reddit.
Amazing. Like such an interesting study as well, like actually following the users themselves. So, and another mention for Reddit. There we go. Okay, so last bit of the presentation, then we can get to a couple of the questions. Kevin, this is you. LLM traffic converts better than Google. We proved it with the data. This data, I'm just going to tell everyone, this is about shopping queries and it's to retailer sites. So the intent to buy is already very, very high. But Kevin, can you explain why you think this is the case, like the logic, the audience logic behind it?
So what I'm seeing is that the time that people spend on LLMs is higher than they would spend on Google search, and conversions of LLM referral traffic, or as we see here on LLMs themselves, is seems to be higher than on Google. And so what's happening here is that people are getting obviously their questions answered in a cleaner way, in a much more efficient way, effective way. And so they when they click out from LLMs, they have all the context they need. And so that's also why the LLMs are sending more traffic to the homepage and it converts better. And I will also say that with memorization and integration features into Google Mail or Google Calendar, and soon probably, all sorts of interesting data, I think that trend is actually going to grow. And I'd be curious to maybe do this exercise again and compare ChatGPT with classic Google with AI modes in maybe a year out.
Challenge accepted. We will give you that data in a year's time. Um, Baruch, what are you seeing in your world?
Yeah, I see something very basic at the end of the day. Like the questions and top of mind comprehensiveness is there for people, and they've been prompted through these LLMs or like ChatGPT. And we're gonna see, I would say this is a reality. Google also introduced in the Google I/O conference that they're gonna take it even further. You're gonna do the entire buy through their experience. And I don't see anything different that is coming from ChatGPT. It will be the same. People want to be as close as possible to the transaction moment, and they're giving everyone the information. So we should be expecting more and more of these type of interaction and conversion. Conversion is just proving that probably this is the way we want to consume it. So I think we should really pay attention to it. But we are in an evolution, and this is really important. As consumer, we're not overnight turning everything off. There's a lot of different habits of different people. And as Kevin showed in his previous study with the different population, it's just a matter of what are the things that builds our own trust over time with these new interfaces. So and it's good to monitor them.
And a good call again to reflect what both of you have said throughout this presentation, that the traffic's good. It's something that we need to, SEO should own and conquer this whole new world. So before we go to the one takeaway of today from both of you, I guess we'll use up the full hour because we've still got lots of people on and lots of questions here. I want to go to a couple of the questions. Now, someone's asked about what source code seems to make AI crawlers happy, schema, headers, URLs. Is that how LLMs work? Is it the same way in Google?
I will say that Google is, as we know, a far more sophisticated scraper and a crawler than any one of these LLM. And we should recognize that. And it looks at many factors and data that they have that these LLM don't have, including behavioral data that is actually happening, browsing behavior from years of doing these type of these activities. So how we crawling the pages is not the same always factors that you cared about or less importance that may exist in LLM. For example, we all care about very much about page speed and things of that nature. I think in some LLM, they care less. JavaScript rendering and stuff of that matter does matter in Google still. It is part of your content. How much does it matter in LLM? I don't know. I don't think so right now. Simpler, shorter content with less JavaScript actually might be the way to go. I will say that putting content and having authority behind the content, the practices of EEAT are remaining in everywhere. So being an expert, becoming and developing the authority and developing this entire sort of structure of the page to fully and comprehensively answer the information, as Kevin mentioned earlier, is extremely important. in structuring your content. And yes, you can put pictures and videos and reviews, and these are important signals that helps build over time your authority. I think the other piece, of course, is go and look at your presence elsewhere. Because it's part of informing your domain strength in this area. And so they're looking also what people think about you and not just what you just have on your own website. So that is an important part of your information and how your brand is being perceived elsewhere to help train these LLM as well.
Actually, that plays into a next question, and I wonder if you could elaborate on this, Kevin. But so, someone's asked, do LLMs and Google feed from the same sources? For instance, do they look at social media to answer questions as well as websites?
Yes. Yes and no. So they largely feed from the same sources. It's important to understand that LLMs don't have a web index or like a database of sites like Google has. They do have agreements. OpenAI has an agreement with Reddit, for example, so they will pull Reddit results into their answers. They will use them for training data. They have agreements with other providers, Yelp, for example, and then of course they also go out, as Baruch already explained so well. They go out and crawl the web, and they can surface answers from the web very, very quickly. I think what's important here, and that's why I appreciate that question so much, is that for a long time, social media and search was pretty disjointed, and that's not the case anymore. So when I say disjointed, what I mean is content from social networks, unless you're looking for Taylor Swift's Instagram profile, sure, it appears at the top. But if you're looking to buy a new car, you rarely would have gotten a Facebook groups post or a tweet. I mean, it's also not the topic for Twitter, but like from other kind of social networks as part of the best answer. But on a lot of LLMs and increasingly also in AI overviews, all of a sudden that's changing. And it's in large part due to Reddit, but also some other forums. And an underlying reason is that the quality of what is mostly human answers and unbiased answers, the quality and the value of that has 10x, maybe more. And so I think the interesting question for us marketers here is, how can you, or what's the benefit of engaging on some of these social platforms as the answers on these platforms are being pulled into LLMs? I would say the value is high, and it is tough to measure, especially when you start out. So I also see here some brands are just willing to kind of be at the forefront of this and give this a shot to reap a lot more awards than the brands are trying to like really quantify all of those activities on social networks.
Yeah, very interesting time. And actually, this leads on to another question of, okay, so you do things in a different way, but also what do you report on? So someone has asked, okay, what SEO report metrics were at the core traffic conversions ranking? And they've said visibility. In my experience, it's not always visibility that's very strongly reported on, but people are asking, what is the SEO report of the future? What does that look like?
So first, keep watching the zero click. Because the zero click is what helps you, I would say, to discuss the evolution that we're going through and understand how we're evolving. So don't give up on Google, traditional Google, as that quickly. The second thing is, I think, the impressions themselves, and both on the how much are you showing in these places where you get answers, and of course citation, that are the sources, and then I would say, the new share of voice under these LLM, which will be a new way of actually measuring it. I can tell you that being in the forefront of building tools for the people on this call, this is the number one thing we're currently spending. Some of the metrics, Kevin sort of mentioned them earlier, but definitely, how do we think about the topic breadthity of how much I'm covering that topic, which will become very important. Sources of influence, absolutely will play into this place. Domain authority in its new world, and not necessarily domain authority just for the old style of do I have enough links? My domain authority is the right way for the link profile I currently have. I think this is while this is important, but as becoming less and less important as we're thinking about domain, how to articulate domain authority in this view. So, and of course, and the language coverage will play a lot of place here. So definitely there's going to be a change in the metrics we're looking into to bring to users to understand better. Some are even talking about some areas of cosine similarities between keywords and topics. So those are other interesting metrics to better understand, the coverage of the entity that you are after. Kevin, do you have other ideas?
Yeah, look, I'm totally with you, right? I mentioned this earlier, but SEO is turning into a channel of influence rather than performance because clicks are going away. And when you look at other influence channel like brand advertising or brand marketing, a lot of it is being measured in eyeballs or impressions, in brand touch points, and in brand perception. And so, I think, or I would make a bet that in a year from now, it is much more common for SEO teams to do brand awareness and brand recall and sentiment surveys than it is today from an SEO perspective. And then also there's the whole kind of post sign up or post purchase part of understanding results, right? Like for example, self attribution, specifically asking people, where have you heard about us? Or going like doing that a bit more refined, pairing that with user interviews, and then some of these more abstract, broader metrics like impressions and share of voice, which are very valuable, I think. I think that is kind of where we'll land as of right now, unless things are changing again tomorrow, right? But yeah, I think there's a long way to say I agree with you, Babu.
Thank you both. And actually, Kevin, you answered someone's question there about talking about how they could do more user research. So I'm just going to quickly end on a fact that Similarweb have tools to be able to keep up with the Gen AI revolution. We talked a lot about traffic. Is it the metric we need to focus on? Yeah, whether you agree or not, your CEO probably still demands you report on it. And so we've got traffic metrics for any website in the world that's coming from AI referral sources. We also are launching an AI brand visibility tool later this week, which will show you things like the primary source type, the LLM relies on for particular topics. So very similar to everything we've talked about today. So that is the product marketing bit done. So thank you all so much for attending, and Baruch and Kevin, thank you so much for joining us. We didn't get to every question, but we've got a record of them, and we'll try and put together a Q&A to send out following this recording. It will be sent to everyone. And yes, just again, thank you, Baruch and Kevin. Your input was really invaluable and so important in this time of change.